There are few tropes more prevalent in the horror genre than the jump scare. Simply defined as the use of sudden visual or audio stimulus to elicit a reaction from the viewer or player, this classic trick has likely gotten the best of everyone at least once or twice. Slender, the 8 Pages, originally released in 2012, used the fear of experiencing a jump scare as motivation to compel players to track down 8 scattered pieces of paper as quickly as possible. Failure results in a booming attack from the Slender Man, a suit-wearing, faceless being who originates from an infamous creepypasta. The game was a huge success, and the very next year, Blue Isle Studios released Slender: The Arrival, a more fully fledged game intent to capitalize on the overnight popularity of the clad killer. 10 years later, the game has been re-released, rebuilt in Unreal Engine 5. Slender Man is back, but does his style have some substance? Whereas the 8 Pages kept its story minimal, The Arrival attempts to inject a bit more narrative to chew on. You play as Lauren, who begins the game on her way to visit her childhood friend Kate, intent on helping her move out of her childhood house. Unfortunately, Kate's nowhere to be found, and things quickly go downhill after a strangely abrupt transition from day to night. From there, your focus shifts from moving boxes to staying alive. Told mostly through collectible notes scattered throughout the world, Slender's story is forgettable and thin. These notes can be quite unsettling, but they feel like an easy way to insert a narrative into the game without providing proper production value. Lauren is unvoiced, and since the game is played in first person, she really doesn't even feel like a character. A lot of modern horror games, typically of the indie variety, often ditch more traditional cutscenes and storytelling for minimal exposition told through optional documents. This decision may simply stem from budgetary limitations, which developers have no control over, but I often find this method of storytelling to be underwhelming nonetheless. At the end of the day, most players may not care what's going on, as long as it leads them to the Slender Man. And the Slender Man you will see, albeit under a different set of circumstances. In the prior game, you'd explore an open area housing the 8 pages needed for completion. The more pages you collected, the more aggressively the Slender Man would pursue you. Slender: The Arrival abandons this structure, apart from a clever early game section. This game instead employs a linear, level-based structure, allowing for more environmental variety and a longer length. Most levels simply require you to get from point A to B, but you'll typically need to acquire a key or item at some point to progress past some kind of blockade. This structure means that instead of Slender Man appearing dynamically, his presence is mostly relegated to scripted moments. That's not to say there aren't moments of unexpected scares that will vary with each playthrough. One level harkens back to the collection-based ideals of the 8 pages. Stuck in a mine, you're forced to activate a handful of generators to pursue an elevator capable of providing escape. The goal is simple enough, but perhaps unsurprisingly, you're being pursued, not by Slender Man, but by a new enemy. Unlike his taller companion, this enemy makes noise with its footsteps and can be slowed by focusing the beam of your flashlight. This portion isn't very challenging and shouldn't take very long, reflecting the game's overall ease and brevity, with the first playthrough clocking in at only a couple of hours. You do unlock an updated version of the original game upon completing The Arrival, but even with this appreciated edition, it's hard not to feel like the game is light on content for its $20 asking price. With a short length and lack of compelling gameplay mechanics, it becomes increasingly important that Slender: The Arrival nail the scares. Unfortunately, it falters there as well. The Arrival does succeed at establishing a sense of dread. The atmosphere here doesn't feel like a PG-13 teen horror movie. It feels much more menacing and disorienting, its unsettling vibe bolstered by the aforementioned notes scattered around the levels, as well as the tense, subdued soundtrack. As is often the case, the anticipation of what may be around the next corner is scarier than what actually lies in wait. Slender Man is used surprisingly sparingly, and despite him retaining his disturbing appearance, I just didn't find him to be particularly frightening. Slender: The 8 pages was so intense because capture by the Slender Man meant total game over. As I've mentioned before, a reset of progress is often far more terrifying than any monster a game can present. In The Arrival, meeting your demise simply brings you to an underwhelming retry screen, eager to bring you back to the most recent checkpoint. Gone are the stakes in Slender: The Arrival, and with them, the scares. That is, however, not to say that the game won't make you jump on occasion. I readily admit that I yelled out expletives I won't repeat here more often than I expected. If nothing else, Slender the Arrival seems to have mastered the art of that fabled jump scare. Perhaps the clearest difference from this new version of the game is the updated visuals, looking much sharper than the original release. It's no visual showpiece by any means, but it does provide an encouraging preview of Unreal 5's power. Whether or not good graphics make for scarier games is up for debate, but either way, the Arrival has received a much-needed facelift. Creating a horror-based experience is anything but easy. Different people are scared by different things, meaning that there's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution when trying to craft a truly scary tale. The complications are only heightened by making a video game, as fear must meet fun. Slender the Arrival mostly forgets fun back in the woods somewhere, meaning that more weight is placed upon its ability to frighten the player. When that too doesn't deliver, you're left with a game that just doesn't feel like it needs to be experienced. If you're a die-hard Slender Man fanatic, you've probably already played it, but for everyone else, there are plenty of other horror games more worthy of your hard-earned money. Hopefully next time, Slender Man brings as many good ideas as he does pocket squares.